let's
ridiculous and not
let's
crazy.
start with the deal. The deal for phase one. This is, Trump is calling it a peace deal. The war is over. Hamas is saying the war is over. I think Israel would think otherwise.
Well, look, let us remember, and I wrote this earlier
And I
this
did
week.
too, why we're here.
Right. Look, Hamas is not an organization that accepts interim deals, that accepts interim goals. All you need to do is go back. We'll put a link in the show notes to Hamas's charter, right? Hamas's charter is an
I'm just writing
anti-Semitic,
down the show notes.
thank you, Elise, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel screed. And Hamas's goal, and don't forget, Hamas is not just a single organization, a little drop in the Palestinian bucket. Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood, right? The Muslim Brotherhood is a very big, very serious, very, almost 100-year-old Islamist extremist organization. And their goal is the destruction of the state of Israel. But the Hamas guys, are much more tactically patient than any of us. And obviously the Israelis can't be tactically patient because they've got 48 hostages, 20 of whom, maybe even 21 of whom are alive. And so, as you and I know, the key was to get these guys back. And we can talk about, and we talked about last week, whether it was Israel's strike on Qatar, whether it was Donald Trump's diplomacy, whether it was the reintroduction of Jared Kushner. I never thought I would say thank God, but I would take 20 Jared Kushners before I would
Over
take
one
another
Steve
Steve.
Witkoff.
Bingo.
Well, whatever, whatever
Whatever.
combination of it. And Tom Nides, the former ambassador to Israel, was just on CNN saying, I really don't care what it was. Like, if they're coming home,
They're coming home.
they're coming home. And, hopefully the deceased will come back as well. But the main thing is to get right now. Hopefully these 20 people will be with their families in the next few days. And, I think that, and I wrote this, like, I feel like the trauma in Israel is less now about what happened on October 7th as time has passed. And it's more about those hostages not being home, the whole nation of Israel tonight. Why are they happy that there's a deal? Because the hostages might come home. And I don't think anybody thinks this is an end to the war. I don't think anybody thinks this will bring peace with the Palestinians, but, they are feeling like this should be over, and it's time for the prime minister to put the hostages as a priority, which he hasn't.
So I don't agree with you that he hasn't. I don't think that's
Okay.
fair.
Okay.
I don't think that's fair. Look, unfortunately, when you're prime minister, and, again, we can criticize Bibi and he probably deserves criticism. We can certainly criticize certain members of his cabinet who absolutely deserve criticism. But, as well as I do, both of us have spent an enormous amount of time in Israel. Everything in Israel is political. Everything is, your toilet paper choice is political. It makes us look like pikers in America on that front. But, when you're prime minister for the whole country. You're not just prime minister for the 48 hostages, and that sucks, right? And it sucks for the families, and it sucks for the people who are close to
So you
them.
think the majority of the Israeli public wanted him to make a deal and have the hostages come home?
Again, that's not how democracy works. As I keep trying to explain to people, my friends in America, democracy
Oh,
doesn't work like that. Not you, but democracy doesn't work like that. Poll numbers show. It's like, well, tough shit. You can show what your poll numbers are in the next election. In between those elections, the prime minister gets to be the prime minister. And if, by the way, there was a majority to toss him out, Israel has one of the most precarious, most ridiculous, most rickety political systems. And they could have done it. They would have done it if they could have, and they didn't.
I think you made a good point that I want to follow up on, which is, Hamas. This isn't the end of Hamas fighting. They might just kind of melt into the, background and fade away to fight another day. And I'm wondering, Israel, so these comments that we've been seeing by Israel, they're not saying Hamas is saying the war is over. I think the hostage families want to say that the war is over, and certainly Trump is saying the war is over. I haven't heard Netanyahu say the war is over, and they keep saying we're that much closer to fulfilling our aims, to completing our military mission. So my question to you is, I know what I think, but once those hostages are out, I think it's going to be very difficult to believe that Israel won't continue to strike in Gaza.
So I think I think you're completely right that the Israelis are going to reserve their options to themselves. Look, unfortunately, this piece is a lie, right? Hamas is lying. The Israelis are lying. We are lying.
Trump is lying
The
to
A-
himself.
the Arabs are lying because we all know that that's not what this is about, right? For the Israelis, Gaza, they pulled out of Gaza in 2005. Gaza could break off and go float out to the middle of the
Oh, and
ocean, and they would be
I think that
delighted.
the right has designs on that not happening this time, but okay.
I don't think that's right. I think they have designs on the West Bank, but not on Gaza. And having spent plenty of time in Gaza, let me just say, anyone who has designs on Gaza
Well,
has
look
to
at that.
be.
I mean, look at that hotel with, Trump and Bibi having hummus on the beach. I mean, anyway,
Yes,
there's a lot of there's a
I
lot
will
of
not
pie,
be a frequent
there's
guest at
a
that
lot of
hotel.
pie in the sky plans for Gaza, but I do think that let's be honest about what has been agreed to. What's been agreed to is a prisoner exchange and for
Oh, I'm sorry, they're not. Those are not prisoners. Those are hostages.
hostages.
Hostages
But
in
I'm
exchange
s-
for
yeah,
terrorists and murderers.
okay. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you, but yes,
Right.
but in exchange of people, hostages for prisoners, and hopefully some more aid will flow into Gaza. But and then Israel pulled back. I don't want to hear that there's no hunger in Gaza. Let's not even go there. But
Yeah.
so okay, so they're all fat. They're all fat generals in Gaza. So Israel pulled back to the line. They didn't pull out of Gaza. The troops aren't leaving Gaza. They're pulling back from Gaza City, where they were before the offensive into Gaza City. So the next phase, which is Hamas disarmed, the new Palestinian government takes over. I mean, reconstruction and a Palestinian government, like that's not going to happen in short order. And so, I mean, I don't see how this and is President Trump going to have the attention span to follow up on these next phases?
I'm I'm less. I mean, I think that's less my question about the attention span. Look, there has never been ever a deal that went through to its culmination,
That's true.
between the Israelis and the Palestinians. The Abraham Accords are magic, right? The Emiratis, the Bahrainis, everybody else, these guys, kept to their word, didn't break relations. Yeah, there are obviously issues, but there are issues between all countries. But those relationships are frankly in many ways a lot more normal than, for example, the Israeli-Jordanian relationship now. So I don't think that Donald Trump is going to, lose interest so much as this roadmap, if I can use that ridiculous term that was used in the Clinton administration, right, isn't real. Because,
Yeah, it's
as
shaky.
you rightly say, right, who is the Palestinian government? Who's doing the disarming? What's going to happen here? And by the way, is it going to be what 90-year-old Abu Mazen who was featured
Well,
in
this is
every
what's
one?
interesting. And I mean, let's not kid ourselves about who this guy is. He was a terrorist that is serving 5 life sentences for Marwan Barghouti as one of the hostages that they're haggling over. Now,
He's not a hostage. He's a
I'm sorry.
terrorist.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm mixing my metaphors. I said he's a terrorist. He's a prisoner, and he's serving 5 life sentences, plus 40 years, I think. He's one of the prisoners that the Palestinians are haggling over. Now, is Israel not going? This is a third rail in Israeli politics. Do not let Marwan Barghouti go. Why? Is it because he's a terrorist and all of the crimes that he's committed? They've let a lot of people with blood on their hands go, and they're going to let a lot of other people with blood on their hands go. But we know that he's seen as someone, the Palestinian view, as someone who could be part of a new government. And so I think that guy is like they still. What is the cabinet negotiating on right now or voting on right now? They're not voting on let's have the deal. They're voting on releasing the prisoners. And I think he's a very unpopular. Um, I think that name. I think even the idea of letting the prisoners go is going to be held up. You know.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, this is you're right. This is hugely complex. And I will say, I don't have, in the same way that I knew who Yahya Sinwar was, in the same way that I know who Abu Mazen is, in the same way that I have a good feeling for a lot of the people on the political stage, I actually don't have one for Marwan Barghouti, so I don't have something smart to say here. I'm a little bit embarrassed because I should, because this is my bread and butter, but my bread is not buttered on the Marwan Barghouti front. And I'll say this: look, the Israelis let Yahya Sinwar go. They gave the
And look
guy
what
brain
happened.
surgery, and look what happened. And I think with any of these people, there's that hesitation. On the one hand, and I wrote about this, there's this arrogance in the Israeli political body, and it's left and right, that we can manage the Palestinian political scene. And the answer is October 7th, you can manage the Palestinian political scene. Good work. But there's that, and there's this trepidation about the players who are going to make up the future of Palestinian politics. And I just, we've talked about this before. There's no obvious that guy, right?
Right.
There's no,
Right.
there's no situation like there was in Afghanistan. There isn't even a situation, frankly, like there was in Iraq, because there is no Palestinian exile community outside the West Bank and Gaza that actually supports accountability, democracy, markets, freedom, human rights, women's rights, religious freedom. There's nobody. There's nobody. It's absolutely incredible.
Well,
It would be
those people are not, they may consider themselves Palestinian American or Palestinian this or Palestinian that, but they're not tethered to kind of the Palestinian cause. If those people
well, they're tethered
exist,
to the anti-Semitism that they've been out parading for the last 2 years.
not
So
every
you'd
single
think,
Palestinian, Danny, but many of them, yes.
no, and that plenty of them are not Palestinians at all. Plenty of them are just plain anti-Semites.
Yes.
But at the same time, it is quite remarkable that there is nobody on the
Well, I think
outside.
that,
Name
I
one.
don't, well,
Name
all I'm
one who
saying is
isn't
that I
80.
think President Bush did a good job of trying with our friend Elliot Abrams of trying to identify those people and make efforts to try and help people like Salam Fayyad try and bring up a new generation of Palestinian technocrats or responsible people. There's been no effort since President Bush to do that.
Um, well, I don't think that's entirely fair, but again, you're right that it certainly hasn't been central in the same way, because,
And
the peace process is an ill wind that blows no good. But can I just add one other point to this too? At the 50th anniversary, 60th anniversary, the 60th anniversary of the Six-Day War, we did a little video series at AEI. So we're talking about a while ago now, and Elliot was part
that's
of it, but
before my time.
you're such a baby. Um, right. You were just sitting there watching Sesame Street while
No,
Danny was
I
doing
was just
boring
a
videos.
thought in my mother's perverted head at that time.
This is the 60th anniversary, bitch. Not not the Six-Day War. But we talked to, we talked to the sort of Israeli side. We also talked to some of the people who were in the Palestinian American movement at that point. And one thing that became absolutely clear, they had all been muscled out of their business because they didn't support the corruption of the Palestinian Authority, because they didn't support Abu Mazen, because they didn't support Yasser Arafat, because they had, these were people who had real hopes,
Hmm.
and it was honestly a little bit heartbreaking to talk to them, because these were people who in the heyday actually thought that, this could have been something, as opposed to the terrorist slash kleptocratic nightmare that it's become from this moment. Anyway, we do have other stuff to talk about, but
Well,
yay.
I
At the
just
end of the
very
day, it's
quickly,
still good news.
yeah, very quickly, just on President Trump. I mean, I'm not one to throw around praise for President Trump, but I think that he deserves a lot
No,
of credit. not just for this deal, but the way he kind of played, his relationships with the Arabs to go after Hamas, the way he muscled Netanyahu, like jawbone Netanyahu, which no president has really done. And I don't know that he's going to get the Peace Prize because I think that we know he
No
wants it.
way. I
I
know he
think
wants
that
it.
it's too first of all, the deal is still hasn't even been inked yet. And,
As
next year,
opposed
if
to
there's
Barack Obama's many
well, I
accomplishments
mean,
for which he got the Peace Prize.
I always said he never deserved it and never did anything to live up to it. So, but what I'm
Yeah,
saying is hopefully they've learned the lesson on that one. But um,
we'll
I think
see.
it's if there's peace in the Middle East next year, or at least like a stability, then maybe he does deserve it. Right now, I think it's early, and I think it's also wrapped up in just a lot of the other things that he's done to allies around the world that they're not going to give it to him this year, I think.
We'll see. I
But
frankly,
he does deserve credit, and I
uh,
think he deserves all the credit, that he's getting. I mean, certainly Biden didn't do anything to try and bring this war to a close at all. And so, his kind of one foot in, one foot out, one foot with Israel, one foot with the Palestinians. I mean, President Trump has put a lot of effort into this, and I feel like deserves the credit that he's getting. Um, what should we move on to?
uh,
The
uh,
shutdown?
we can be gracious about it, just as you were, right? Which is important, right? Call balls and strikes. That way
Yep,
you're
that's what
that
we
way
do.
one is a credible commentator. God, this shutdown is so stupid. There was something else we wanted to talk about that wasn't Letitia James,
Letitia
so I want to.
James.
Now there was something else we wanted to talk about. I'm just too stupid to remember. I'm sorry. It's late. No, no. Let's talk about the world's freaking dumbest shutdown. Oh my God.
I mean, I think that, and this is what I hate about. I'm a political neophyte, and I hate when politics gets in the way of actually governing the country. I mean, both sides are just trying to get. It has nothing to do with policy. It has nothing to do with. I just think it's about who's going to, be blamed, and we could blame the Republicans for this. We can blame the Democrats for this. I just
You
think
can't
it's not
always
a.
blame the Republicans. You can't
Well,
blame the
you can on
Republicans
the
when the
I
Republicans shut it down, and you can't blame the Republicans when the Democrats shut it down. This
Right.
is a
But I just
Democrat
think it's
shutdown,
not a
and it's stupid.
principled. I mean, my personal opinion is that I do think that the healthcare subsidies, even though we talked about this last week, even though they were COVID era subsidies, I feel like
Well,
healthcare is too expensive. Let me
the
finish.
Democrats didn't
Hello.
extend this when they controlled every branch
Well,
of
they should
government.
have. And Danny doesn't really
No,
believe in
they shouldn't have.
Dan, Danny doesn't believe in the credits, but since I'm personally benefiting from them, Danny doesn't want me to have any health care.
That's right. I don't want you to,
She wants me
but
to be
I will
sick and
always look
infirm.
after you. I
You
will make
will.
you soup,
Yes, she does make good chicken soup, by the way.
and I will
Um,
amputate your leg if necessary.
Thank you.
I've got very good.
And then I'll hobble over to your house. But I do believe that this shutdown is not getting anybody anywhere, and now it's just who's blaming one another. And people are being furloughed, people aren't getting paid. And now, we've seen, you're lucky you got out on your flight yesterday or the other day, because a lot of these flights are being canceled because there's not enough traffic controllers.
Right, because
And
air traffic
but
controllers
in the
aren't coming to
larger
work,
sense,
but they expect to be paid.
right.
Right.
Well,
Remember what
why should
happened
you
to them when Ronald Reagan was
look?
president.
All of these people that aren't getting paid are not all Democrats, they're Republicans too.
I don't give a
So
shit whether they're Republicans or Democrats, Elise. There is no entitlement to my tax dollars. Either go to work and then you will get paid, or don't go to work
okay,
and
well,
then
if
you
I'm
should
ready
be
to go to,
fired.
if I'm willing to go to work and the government tells me not to go to work,
That's
I
not what
still
the
deserve the
government has
money.
told the FAA. That is not what the government has told the air traffic controllers. The
I'm
reality is
talking
air
about
traffic
all the people in the
controllers.
government that have been furloughed and are not able to come to work. These are people that
Yes,
want to
but
come
they
to
are
work.
not your air traffic controllers, my friend. They are the
That was just
Department
a
of
little joke.
Agriculture.
Oh, come on. That was just a little joke.
No,
I'm not
come on.
talking about the air traffic
Look,
controllers that
at a
called in
certain
sick.
moment, even the Washington Post said, even the Washington
Even
Post
the
said.
that bastion of, well, it's not so much a liberal paper anymore. It's coming
Oh,
over
I'm
to the dark
sorry.
side.
So what? You mean you moved from the far left to the
To
center
the
left?
center left, yes.
Okay. Even the Washington Post said Obamacare was never affordable. Obamacare was never sustainable. The money that they are spending is triple. Triple. And we're not talking about jump change here. Triple what we were spending before COVID. It is unaffordable. Now, do I get and agree with you that that healthcare costs are out of control? Oh, believe me, I just had surgery. I just saw the bill for that, and let me tell you, we would all like to be making that a year, is all I can say. But at the end of the day, this is part of the dysfunction. But let's not lie to ourselves that it's better in places like Canada, for example, where they have the distinction, Elise, if you can believe it, this week, for the first time, of euthanizing somebody in order to harvest their organs. They are the world leader in, yes, it's unbelievable, in what they call MAID, right? Assisted suicide. You can't get a doctor's appointment in Canada. You can't get a kidney transplant. You can't get heart surgery. You can't see a psychiatrist in less than a year. But within 48 hours, you can kill yourself with the assistance of the Canadian government. So don't, we are
That's what
not
I would call a
perfect.
good to know.
They fucking suck.
Oh,
Anyway,
I didn't say they're any better.
good.
Um, anyway, listen, I think this shutdown is, I mean, I think that when people shut down, it's really never, as my original belief is that this is not about policy, it's about politics and who's going to blame the other one for the shutdown. And I think they both suck.
And of course, Schumer would be more willing to have an intelligent conversation about this if he wasn't so afraid of AOC and being primaried, which in and of itself tells you everything you need to know,
Well,
because that's so depressing.
you saw what happened to him after he did it the first time. So after
Poor
he,
guy. I really feel for him. He's otherwise such a principled leader.
oh yeah.
Anyway, oh yeah.
Um, Letitia James, I don't want to get into Letitia James herself, but as you saw,
Oh,
she
really?
was,
You mean the woman who prosecuted Donald Trump,
well,
who ran on prosecuting Donald Trump,
well,
who said that he was an illegitimate president?
as I
Not
believe
that
I
one?
said to you an hour ago, um, if you're going to go after someone for political persecution, as she did on Trump, which was a bogus, he did do those things. She just didn't need to go after him over that. And it was
Well,
like a stupid, it was a stupid case. But if you're going to do that, you better be squeaky clean. And she wasn't squeaky clean.
I don't know if she wasn't squeaky clean. You know
Well,
what? I
apparently she
thought she
lied on
was.
her mortgage, but they found something to go after her on. Just
Look,
like, I mean, you
a
know,
grand jury. What's the famous line? A grand jury will indict a ham.
a ham
Will indict a
sandwich.
ham sandwich. Right. So, and she was indicted by a grand jury. I don't know where this is going to go in terms of prosecution, but look. You know what? My feeling about this is I said this was not legitimate when she did it. I don't think it's
Right.
legitimate when
Agreed.
Donald Trump did
Agreed.
it. But
Agreed.
my attitude is if you, and when I say this, I do not mean Elise Labott, because I know that you are an equal opportunity hater like I am. But if you, all of the outrage machine, the New York Times, etc., the liberal establishment, did not say something when she first went after him for nakedly political reasons, then you should keep your mouth shut now, because as one of our listeners just said, karma is a bitch.
Yeah, karma's a bitch. But I will say, though, that I think this is separate. And let's see who else he's going after.
Comey.
Comey, who I don't think he deserves that. And we both don't have one good thing to say about Comey, but he's still, this is payback. Who else?
Yes, it is.
Bolton.
Actually, in the
Bolton
case of,
actually Bolton did kind of break the law. So, but
well,
certainly if the book was more favorable to Trump, I doubt he would be going after him.
but you know what,
Adam
Elise, can we
Schiff.
talk about that? Hang on a sec.
Yeah.
God, Adam Schiff. You know what? I would pardon all of them, and he can have Adam Schiff.
Okay.
But let me just say something about this. The thing that really pisses me off about the classified documents thing, and this is something you haven't worked in government, and I have, and so and one thing I will say about this classified document thing is this happens all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I will not mention his name, and he is deceased. But somebody who you and I both know, and I suspect a lot of our listeners know, was caught with a foot high pile of classified documents at his house. You know, he wasn't taking them in order to leak them to the Chinese. He just took them to work at home, and he thought the rules shouldn't apply to him because he was a hot shit, right? And I remember the Secretary of State knew about it. She suspended him for a couple weeks and then quietly reinstated him. The problem is, like everything, this is something where there's been selective enforcement. And, you know, this is something that should stick in everybody's craw. If you're a tax evader, you're a tax evader. If you're a pilferer of classified information, you're a pilferer of classified information. If you're a leaker, you're a leaker. And I get that there are degrees, but this is the problem. We have lost all sense of perspective on these things, you know? And
Yeah.
that's really, you know, I would never in a million years have taken a classified document home. And plenty of my counterparts in the federal government did it all the time. And yeah, if you're going to throw stones, you better not live in a glass house. You're exactly right. The problem is it's hard to know what a glass house is anymore because what was okay is no
Right.
longer okay.
Right. Right.
Depressing.
Right. I just think this that
It's bad.
we're going down a rabbit hole of political persecution. And I mean, there are a lot of people who have aggrieved President Trump. And I mean, how deep is he going to go to find stuff on these people?
Well, and again,
It's, and
what is he going to do?
I'm not saying that what they did to him was right
Right. No, I
on
get it.
some of these things, but it's just making me feel very uncomfortable.
Right, like the big New York Times expose. New York Times, I had to literally New York Times expose on just how corrupt the Biden family was in Ukraine, right? And of course, now we understand better why it was that Joe pardoned every member of his family for anything they did over more than a decade
Writing in
period.
the show notes.
And of course, what's going to happen? Donald Trump is going to do the same thing. The next president's going to go after him and his family, and then we're going to have this cycle. And you're exactly right. I don't know how we get out of this spiral. It's, you know, and the kind of necessary leadership, the kind of integrity that, you know, we don't need a race to the bottom, my friend Grace. Actually, if you're a crook, you're a crook. And there's no question about the Biden family as well, unfortunately. That's the shame here, right? It would be nice to have a president who didn't intend to be rich when he left. Nice to have a president who didn't actually have a family member who was a criminal. I don't know. Maybe that's just too much to ask for.
A time gone, an era gone by. We're over. I'm just going to give a little plug for my friend and former boss, Sam Feist at C-SPAN, who's launching a new show tomorrow night called Ceasefire, which is about what we're talking about. He's bringing people together from different stripes, like Danny and myself, who agree on the need for common ground and see if they can't, you know, find solutions together. Tomorrow night is Rahm Emanuel and Mike Pence.
Two
Um,
people who, by the way, we've had actually Mark and I have had on our podcast both Rom and Mike Pence, and what a great choice.
yeah, it's a great idea. I like the idea of finding common ground. We try to find common ground on values, on respect, on goals, even if we don't agree on tactics or ideology. Sometimes we do, but it's always respectful and with a goal towards
So watch
trying to
it.
understand each other a little bit better. So
Yeah, no, good
thank
for
you, my
Sam.
friend.
Thank you.
And
Mwah. Thank you, everybody, for
mwah.
tuning in.
We'll see you
We'll be
next
back
week.
next
If
week.
there's,
See you
you
next
know,
week.
we maybe if there's
If
some
there's
news
something
on the
big.
Middle East, we'll come back. But if not, we'll see you next week, next
Ciao,
Thursday.
ciao.
If it's Thursday, it's Hot Takes Happy Hour. Ciao.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Elise.